Hey there. Welcome to the School of Kingdom Writers website. I am so happy that you're here. My name is Brad Paquette. I am the director of the School of Kingdom Writers, and we just get to have a chat for a few minutes right now. So this isn't scripted. We're just going to talk a little bit about writing as an industry. We're going to talk about writing education, kind of how all these pieces fit together. So I'm assuming that if you're here, two things are true. One is that you're thinking pretty strongly about writing as a profession, and you're wondering if that's calling on your life. Maybe you already know it's calling on your life, but you're thinking about how do I take next steps to achieve being a professional writer. And secondly, I'm assuming that you're a Christian, that Jesus is a really important part of your life. Now, maybe you want to write kind of typical Christian literature, which is stories by Christians, for Christians, about Christians, and that's fine. But maybe you want to do something a little more covert, like you want to write books for secular audiences, but that are embedded with Christian and gospel values, sort of like C.S. Lewis did with the Chronicle of Narnia series. That's great too. You are welcome here. You are the type of writer that we're looking to connect with. So the School of Kingdom Writers is a 2-year, full-time, comprehensive program that teaches writers how to make it as professional authors. And our program is really different from what you typically see in a creative writing education scenario. So here's the deal, as it presently stands. If I were to make this little graph, and you may have seen this graph at one time as part of a gospel presentation, but we're gonna use it a little bit differently today. And I'm gonna put writers on this side. So we got writers over here, or we should call that aspiring writers, people that want to be writers over here. And then we have professionals over here, people that are making money with their writing. They're able to pay their bills. They're able to sustain themselves as a healthy and functioning adult. And so the question, of course, that we're asking is, how do you get from here to here? And that's a question that literally millions of people are asking. There was a popular study, it's been mentioned so many times, but by other people, including myself. But 81% of Americans say that they would like to write a book. That at some point in their life, they think they'll write a book. So, I mean, you can extrapolate that out. We're talking about over 250 million people that would, to some degree, consider themselves over here in this box, wondering how to get to here. And so here's the problem right now. If you were to go, say, to like a high school guidance counselor or college admissions or really anybody that's supposed to know about career paths, and you say, I want to be a writer, what do I do? They would tell you, well, first get a 4-year degree. Go to Ohio State or go to Harvard, wherever, it doesn't matter. Go to a 4-year college and get a degree in English or history, philosophy, some kind of humanities degree. Study that for 4 years, and then when you're done after 4 years, go ahead and sign up for a Master's of Fine Arts in Creative Writing degree, or an Mfa CW, it's sometimes called, and that'll take you the rest of the way. And at that point, after that 6 or 7 year path, you're going to be qualified to be an author, and you can be a writer then. And that sounds great, but here's the problem. Less than 1% of the people that pursue this path actually make it as professional writers. And 1% is generous. The actual number is probably closer to 0.1%. But at least 99 out of 100 people who start out on this path fall right off this cliff. And after the end of 6 or 7 years and walking away with $250,000 in debt, they are no closer to being a professional author than when they started. And this is really unfortunate. 1%. Can you imagine any other industry in which we would accept a 1% success rate? I mean, would you buy a car from a company that 1% of the cars that roll off the line worked? No, of course not. Would you buy a house from a company that 1% of the houses that they build are still standing after a year? Of course you wouldn't. But for some reason within creative writing education, I think because we're confused about the arts and vocation and how all these pieces fit together, we accept that, and people are signing up in droves to do it. So this point here, that point that you finished your undergrad and you're thinking about it, an MFA creative writing degree, about 20,000 people a year enroll in that last step of the process to become professional writers, or so they're told. So 20,000 people are following this path every single year. And so, we can kind of rule that out right away, right? I mean, you wouldn't pay $250,000 for 1%. That's just a bad deal. You don't have to be an economist to understand that. So what are other options? let's keep exploring. The other thing that people do, a lot of people see the logic in that. I did an anecdotal, granted, study of 2017 New York Times bestsellers. 2017, because that's just the last time that I did this. But I went through all of the people that occupied the number one bestseller spot in fiction on the New York Times bestseller list. And I believe it was 23 individuals at any time in the year occupied that spot. Only one of them had a master's in fine arts degree. And that one person was Owen King, and he achieved the number one spot with the book that he co-wrote with his father, Stephen King. So something tells me that his MFA wasn't what was responsible for that number one selling position. So let's say that you've ruled that out. So you say, well, that's obviously a waste of time and money. I'm not going to do that. It sounds fun, but I'm not going to do it. So instead, I am just going to kind of do my own thing. I'm going to self-teach. I'm going to join a club. I'm going to, get in a writer's workshop and things like that, go to conferences, whatever I need to do, I'm going to do it. And so you embark on that path. And similarly, the success rate is less than 1%. So with an MFA, without an MFA, and just trying your hardest, the success rate is almost identical. So how do we solve it? Well, I've been working in publishing for a little over 10 years now, mostly specializing in new author development. And it's difficult to peg down exactly what would be a reciprocal rate to this 1%, but I can tell you that it's much, much higher than 1% my clients that are achieving their goals, or that have been achieving their goals. I recently sold my company so that I could start this ministry, so I'm no longer doing that any longer. But the rate is much, much higher than that 1%, and it has to be, or people wouldn't hire me. People wouldn't tell their friends, hey, you got to hire this Brad Paquette guy, if they weren't earning their money back and, earning a lot more on top of that. And it's not all about money, but money can be a reasonable measure of success, especially when we're talking about selling books and things like that. So my success rate has been much, much higher than that 1%. And so to figure out how we make this happen for like an academic setting, we have to look at the issues with an MFA course. So this is our MFA course here. Now, the first issue with the MFA, creative writing path, is design. An MFA is not designed to create novelists or to create professional writers, even though that's why almost 100% of people pursue an MFA. Not 100%. Some of them, they want to be able to teach in a college setting or something like that, and that's why they pursue it. But almost all of them start this path because they dream of one day becoming a novelist or a professional writer in some capacity. But a Master's of Fine Art really isn't designed to do that. A Master's of Fine Art is designed to make you a Master of Fine Art. It is designed to answer the question, what is great art? So you will absolutely leave an MFA program with the ability to talk well above my level about what is great literature, what defines the classics, questions like this. However, that has very little relationship to the skills that are necessary to be a professional writer. This is a well-known phenomenon. There's many books written about it at this point, but there's a book that kind of tipped things off called MFA versus NYC that you could check out. And the idea there is that, most publishing houses are in New York City. And so there's this great divorce, this great divide between what MFAs are teaching over here and what New York City publishing houses are actually interested in publishing. And those New York City publishing houses that are over here are mostly influenced by what American consumers want. So the question is not what makes great literature, but the question we should be asking is, what do American readers want to read? What are they willing to actually pay money for? So that's the first issue that we want to address. And the second issue, and this is equally as bad, I think they kind of share fault in this regard. The second issue is that the MFA program, even if it does accidentally teach you how to write a great book, doesn't give you any information about what to do with the book after that. So they're not going to spend any time talking about how do you find a book deal? How do you orchestrate a book release? How do you build a marketing platform? What are marketing tactics that work? Right? Those kind of issues are crass. They are not a part of fine art. Fine art is not motivated by commerce, so it would be inappropriate to talk about commerce. But in real life, commerce is super important to art. Art and commerce have to work together. And I think that that's really unique about books, and that's part of what gives them so much power. That's part of what makes them such an amazing vessel for sharing values, for sharing stories and themes and things like that, because a book by nature must be mass produced. I guess it wouldn't have to be. You could print a copy and leave it on your desk or something, and that would be fine. But in order for it to be what we consider the art form of literature, it has to be mass produced. So there's always this relationship, this corollary between mass production and commerce and art in books. And so we have to consider these two pieces together. So here's what the School of Kingdom Writers does. And really, this is based on basically what I've done for the past 10 years. So, I noticed that I would get hired by self-publishers and small presses and mostly new authors of one type or another. Either the press would hire me or the person would hire me, and I'd come in and I'd help them to write great work. I'd help them to build a platform and set up a book release and do all the things that they need to do in order to reach their goals. I tell them what they're doing well and what they can improve on. And what I found is that in most of those situations, I'd end up teaching them the same things over and over and over again. And so really the program that we've designed for the School of Kingdom Writers is based on those practical things that every new author needs to know. So there's this skill set that you need in order to reach your goals, and that's what we're going to teach you. We're not really interested in talking about having some endless reading list, right? And talking about, what is great literature. I mean, I like those conversations. We can certainly talk about that, but that's not our focus. That's not where we're going to land. We'll do a little bit of that for fun, but mostly what we're going to talk about is what do you need to know in order to be successful in this industry? So there are 3 parts to our curriculum. They're going to help you with that. The first one, I'm going to make a bridge here. If we have our first pier here, it's writing. We're going to teach you how to write stuff really well. And our focus within writing is on being multimodal. And what I mean by that is publishing in lots of different ways. So absolutely, we are talking about writing books, but we're also exploring writing blogs and social media content. We're talking about writing for podcasts and writing for YouTube videos and all these other ways that people are consuming media, consuming values and themes right now. We want to be able to produce it all and then have it all work together. So a big emphasis is on books, but other types of media as well. Outside of that, we're also teaching you to write for the marketplace. So even if you do all these things really well, it takes some time to develop your career as a novelist. You'll have some time in the trenches making all that work. So we're going to teach you how to write advertising copy. We're going to teach you to write text for websites that work, and technical writing, and all these other things, so that while you're building that up, you have something that you can go out and sell right now. So you can go do freelance work, working with a website designer while you're writing your novel. That way you get to work in that space. You get to be working with words all the time, making the right kind of connections, but getting a paycheck now, as well as working for a paycheck down the road. So that's number 1. We're going to teach you how to write. Secondly, we are going to develop you spiritually. So even in my own personal experience working with authors, but there are tons of other stories that you could look up of authors that hit it big and then they lose their faith. Or authors that fail big and then lose their faith. And we don't want either one of those things to happen. So it's so important that everything that we're doing is connected to the Holy Spirit. Now that is where we begin and end each day. So to that end, we're going to spend a lot of time in prayer and worship together. We're going to spend time talking about the Bible. And now we are not a seminary, so we do not have a particular theology that we're going to kind of put on you and expect you to learn or anything like that. But we are mutually, as a group, as a cohort, there'll be 12 students per year in this class. So as that small group, we're going to challenge each other's beliefs. And we're going to say, well, why do you believe that? Not because we're looking for you to be wrong, but we're looking for you to either find a better explanation for your belief or refine your belief, or in some cases say, you're right. I'm looking at the Bible now and this thing that I came in with really doesn't belong like I thought it did. But we're always going to be challenging each other to take stuff back to the Bible. Another big thing that we're going to do is we're going to practice spiritual disciplines. So the church has this magnificent history of what we call the spiritual disciplines that are really just activities that help us to position ourselves to be receptive to God. Some of them I'm sure you know, like prayer and fasting and worship. But there are others as well. There's so many more, like community and simplicity and service. And the list goes on and on. So we're going to explore these things. We're going to have opportunities to practice and experiment with them. And really, what we're doing is we're going to pray, and we're going to expect the Holy Spirit to show up, to help us, to speak to us, and to do cool stuff. But this spiritual pier is so important. It's so critical that we have this firm foundation before we get started. And then the third pier is professional development. We are going to develop you as a professional. And I touched on this a moment ago, but after you write a book, what do you do with it? How do you get a book deal? How do you explore the publishing industry? What are good opportunities and what are scams? How do you develop a social media audience that actually will be helpful and work for you? How do you self-distribute a podcast if that's a direction that you want to go with your platform? So we're going to talk about all of these things. We're also going to talk about how do you pay your taxes so that you don't get in trouble. How do you make when you're a writer, you're essentially a small business. So how do you make a budget as a small business that's going to work and that's going to help you to thrive in the lean seasons and the fat seasons? And so feast or famine, you're able to do it all. Another big piece of this professional development is work ethic. So one of the things that I've found working with writers is that we often have kind of a romantic notion of what the job of a writer is. You probably have one right now. When you think about yourself as a writer in the future, there's something you're thinking about. Maybe you're in a loft apartment in New York City. Maybe you're in like a woodshed in upstate New York, and you've got some kind of secluded hideaway place. Maybe you're in the middle of like a busy coffee shop somewhere. Whatever it is, you have this idea of what it's going to be like to be a writer. Well, I have hard news for you right now. And that is that being a writer, the job of being a writer, is a lot like a job. A lot of your success comes down to being able to plant your butt in the seat for 40 or 50 hours a week and accomplishing tasks in a predictable and efficient way. And if you can do that week after week after week, your chances of being successful skyrocket. And this is one of the biggest challenges. You probably face this challenge already of just developing that focus and that discipline so that you can sit down, do the work that you need to get done, and not be distracted. So we're going to work with you to help you to develop those disciplines, to help you develop that skill and that focus, that time management techniques and things like that are going to be helpful for you. So this is the plan. This is how we move you from being aspiring writers to being professional writers that are actually making a paycheck on this. And, we can't make any guarantees about, percentage of people that are going to make it across this bridge. But I can guarantee you that it's going to blow this 1% out of the water. And so if this is sounding like something that is up your alley, you've been looking for this for a while, then I want to encourage you to apply right now. The application is free, so it's a fairly simple application. On this page that you're on right now, you're going to find a few links. One of them is going to take you to our student information page, where you can learn all about our campus and where we are in Zanesville, Ohio, and a little bit more about our values and how things are going to work and things like that. So I definitely encourage you to take a few minutes and read through that. Make sure this is the fit that you expect it to be. But after that, you can also contact me. I'd love to chat with you. Just one-on-one, let's have a conversation and make sure that everything's lining up. We'll talk about kind of where you are as a writer, where you want to be, and make sure that your values and what your expectations are aligned with the school, as well as answer any questions that you have. So that's really your show to drive if you want to do that. I'm mostly just going to answer your questions and things like that. And so you can email me. My email is on this page, but you can also, it's simple, brad@sokw.org. So that's BRAD at SOKW.org. So you can email me, and if you just want to email back and forth, that's fine. Or if you'd like to schedule a time to Zoom or even to visit us in Zanesville, Ohio, we'll set that up and we'll do that. But then lastly, and you're welcome to jump right to this step, go ahead and apply to the program. As I stated a moment ago, there's no cost to do that. Before you do that, that'll be helpful for you. One thing that'll be helpful for you is there is a prepare to apply page that lists all of the questions that the application is going to ask you. So one section of the application is this short answer section, and we're going to ask you some questions like, about your Christian faith walk and things like that, just to get a sense of who you are. We're not looking to exclude people, but we just want to have a good sense of, who's coming in, what your background is, and things like that. So if you go to that prepare to apply page, you can look at all those questions ahead of time, and I recommend even preparing your answers like on a Word doc. They don't have to be long. A couple sentences to a couple paragraphs is fine, whatever you need to answer the question. But prepare those ahead of time, and then you can copy and paste them into that page. And once we receive that application, we're going to check it out, and then we'll just be in touch to have a conversation. And we're really looking for the Holy Spirit to identify people that are being called into this program. We're not looking for people that have, tremendous degrees or accolades or resumes or bona fides coming in. We're looking for the people that the Holy Spirit is calling specifically. So maybe you are at this point. Maybe you have completed like an undergrad degree and you're thinking about an MFA CW, and this seems like a little bit more viable alternative, which I believe it is. And that's great. You're welcome. We want to talk to you. Maybe you're here, and you could be here, like maybe you're 18 years old, you just finished high school, and you're thinking about this undergrad thing. Maybe you're 50 years old, and you've had a career, and you're looking to make a change. Whatever the case is, but you haven't yet spent all that time and money in the 4-year degree, you're still welcome to apply. You're not required to have a 4-year degree before you come. We're going to pack everything you need to know, start to finish, into this program. In 2 years, you're going to be knocking it out. You're going to have all the stuff together, and you're going to be miles ahead where you are today. So I hope that helps. I think the program's a lot of fun as well. You're going to get a ton of experience actually writing. One last thing I want to share with you. So I have been teaching classes for the School of Kingdom Writers for several years. Before that, I taught classes with the Ohio Writers Association. And so one of the classes that I consistently teach is how to write a novel. I have people that come in at this point. They've finished an MFA CW degree. Some of them are even college teachers now. They're teaching at the college level. And they come to my class because after that 6 or 7 years, all that time, all that money, they've still never actually written a novel. They went through that whole rigmarole, and nobody actually taught them nor required them to write a novel. And that just blows my mind. So they come to a class like mine, and in 6 or 9 months, we teach them how to write a novel, and they actually do it, and they accomplish that milestone. So we know, at least from that perspective, that it works, and we're just seeing tremendous results with our program. It's just wonderful to see students come together to learn this stuff, to start seeing success on this thing that God has called them to. And I would love for you to explore that and potentially be a part of it. So if you have any questions, reach out to me, and thanks for hanging out with me for a few minutes today.